The Urantia Book and the Dead Sea Scrolls, particularly the texts that pertain to the life and teachings of Jesus, represent two vastly different approaches to spiritual revelation: historical narrative and theological interpretation. It is an important differentiation to distinguish, even for the Urantia Book follower, since an interpretation of the Dead Sea Scrolls will likely assist the reader in understanding some of the Judaic culture of that time period. While both claim to illuminate the life and mission of the supposed Messiah, they do so from several radically different perspectives, shaped by their origins, purposes, and cosmological frameworks. The Urantia Book was published in 1955 and was attributed to celestial authors ranging both cognitive and divinity attributes. It presents itself as an apocryphal revelation intended to unify science, philosophy, and religion. The Dead Sea Scrolls, on the other hand, were discovered between 1947 and 1956 near Qumran, and are a collection of Jewish texts dating from the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE, including fragments of what some scholars interpret as containing references to Jesus or messianic expectations that may relate to him. The Dead Sea Scrolls are considered some of the oldest surviving religious texts associated with Judaism and, of course, the Holy Bible, with the exception of Esther, representing the Second Temple period. The comparison between these two sources is not merely academic. It invites reflection on the nature of revelation, the evolution of religious thought, and the enduring quest to understand the figure of Jesus. The Urantia Book devotes nearly a third of its extensive volume to a detailed account of Jesus' life, beginning with his pre-incarnate status as a divine Son of God and culminating in his death, resurrection, and ascension. This reservation is specifically due to both the profound revelatory nature of Jesus' teachings, coupled with the presented reality that his bestowal on our planet was the 7th bestowal mission that Jesus had to experience to gain complete sovereignty over their local universe. This Urantia Book narrative is not a simple retelling of the New Testament story. It is a comprehensive reimagining that integrates theological insights, cosmological context, and psychological depth. Jesus, referred as Michael of Nebadon, is portrayed as a creator son who chose Urantia, Earth, as the site of his final bestowal mission, likely influenced by the two defaults on our planet by our own once planetary prince and material sons Adam and Eve. His life is presented as the 7th and culminating incarnation in a series of divine missions, each designed to reveal aspects of God's nature to the universe. The Urantia Book emphasizes Jesus' dual nature, fully divine and fully human, and seeks to reconcile the theological tensions that have historically surrounded the Holy Bible. It portrays Jesus as a teacher of personal religion, emphasizing the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. And it situates his teachings within a broader cosmic framework that includes celestial beings, planetary administration, and evolutionary spiritual development. In contrast, the Dead Sea Scrolls does not offer a unified or systemic account of Jesus' life. Most of the scrolls are concerned with Jewish law, apocalyptic expectations, and community regulations. However, among the fragments, there are texts that some scholars believe may reference a messianic figure with characteristics reminiscent of Jesus. The so-called Gospel of Jesus in the Dead Sea Scrolls is not a canonical gospel in the traditional sense, nor is it universally accepted as referring to Jesus. Rather, it includes texts such as the Messianic Apocalypse and the Son of God fragment, such as the 4Q246, which describes a figure who will be called the Son of God and will perform miraculous deeds. These texts are tantalizing in their implications, suggesting that the idea of a divine or semi-divine messianic figure was present in Jewish thought around the 3rd century BCE, with some of the texts being speculated as being more recent, to be around 68 CE. A fun fact is that according to biblical scholars Jose O'Callahan and Karsten Peter Thaid, They see many of the parallels with the 7Q5 document in the Gospel of Mark. In addition, the 4Q246, Son of God text, uses such a term along with Son of the Most High to refer to the messianic or royal figure. However, the scrolls do not provide a coherent biography or theological exposition of Jesus, and they are best understood as a part of the religious milieu in which Christianity emerged. Much like the Old Testament itself, little is known as to how many generations of copies and distortions the Dead Sea Scrolls represents, potentially inviting political biases of that time and other cultural influences towards making their way into the Dead Sea Scrolls. One of the most striking differences between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Urantia Book is their approach to revelation. The Urantia Book claims to be a direct transmission from higher celestial beings, such as a divine counselor, mighty messenger, and the Midway Commission, just to name a few. It presents itself as an authoritative source of spiritual truth, intended to correct and expand upon previous revelations, including the Bible. The authors of the Urantia Book assert that their work is constrained by the limitations of human language and concept formation, but they nonetheless aim to provide a comprehensive and accurate account of cosmic reality. Revelation in this context is both periodic and evolutionary, designed to guide humanity through successive stages of spiritual development. The Dead Sea Scrolls, by contrast, are the product of human authorship, with a specific historical and cultural context. They reflect the beliefs, hopes, and anxieties of the Jewish sect, likely the Essenes, who saw themselves as the true remnant of Israel, and who awaited divine intervention in history. Revelation in the scrolls is mediated through prophetic interpretation, scriptural exegesis, and communal experience. It is grounded in the Hebrew Bible and shaped by the apocalyptic worldview of Second Temple Judaism. Another key difference lies in Jesus' mission and message. The Urantia Book presents Jesus as the supreme revelation of God to humanity, whose life exemplifies the ideal of personal religion. His teachings are universal, transcending cultural and historical boundaries, and they emphasize their inner experience of divine sonship. Jesus is depicted as a master teacher, a compassionate healer, and a courageous reformer who challenged the religious authorities of his day. His death is not portrayed as a substitutionary atonement, but as the culmination of a life of perfect service and devotion to God. The resurrection is affirmed, but it is situated within a broader cosmological framework that includes the Urantia life and the ascension to the Father. The Dead Sea Scrolls, insofar as they reference a messianic figure, do so in terms that are more apocalyptic and nationalistic. Contrastingly, in a loving and enlightening sense, the Urantia Book holds these tenets to be true with a twist. The age of light and life will destroy the old materialistic and creature predispositions of the previous age of our planet. And we, perhaps, will come together one day as one government, one language, one religion, and as one people. The Messiah is expected to restore all of Israel in the Dead Sea Scrolls, defeat her enemies, and establish divine justice, which is supported by the Urantia Book through a polar distorted lens of love, beauty, and goodness. The scrolls have little emphasis on personal religion or universal ethics. The focus is on communal purity, eschatological fulfillment, and covenantal fidelity. If Jesus is referenced in the scrolls, he is not portrayed as a universal savior, but as a figure within the Jewish messianic tradition that is a shadowy reflection of what Jesus actually provided. So in other words, the victories in these two documents remains the same for Jesus. However, how they got there differs substantially depending which text you're referring to. The cosmology of the Urantia Book is another area of profound divergence. The book presents a vast and intricate universe, organized into superuniverses, local universes, and planetary systems. It describes a hierarchy of celestial beings, including thought adjusters, guardian angels, and paradise sons, all whom participate in the administration of creation and the guidance of evolving souls. Earth, or Urantia, is portrayed as a planet with a unique spiritual history, including the rebellion of Lucifer, the default of Adam and Eve, and the bestowal mission of Jesus. Human beings are seen as ascending mortals, destined for eternal progress through the mansion worlds and beyond. The Dead Sea Scrolls, by contrast, reflect a more traditional Jewish cosmology, centered on the dualism of good and evil, the expectation of divine judgment, and the hope for resurrection. The scrolls described angelic beings in spiritual warfare, but their cosmology is not as elaborate or systematic as that of the Urantia Book. The focus in the scrolls is on the imminent intervention of God in history, the vindication of the righteous, and the punishment of the wicked. The ethical teachings of the Urantia Book emphasizes personal responsibility, spiritual growth, and a cultivation of divine values. Jesus is portrayed as a model of moral excellence, whose life demonstrates the principles of love, mercy, and truth. The book encourages readers to develop a living faith, to engage in service to others, and to seek communion with God through prayer and worship. The Dead Sea Scrolls, while also concerned with ethical conduct, emphasizes communal purity, ritual observance, and adherence to the law, greatly contrasting the Urantia Book tenets of resisting pre-established dogmas and rituals. The scrolls contain detailed regulations about Sabbath observance, dietary restrictions, and temple worship. The ethical ideal is one of separation from the corrupt world and fidelity to the covenant. The Messianic figure, if present, is expected to enforce divine law and restore righteousness through judgment and power, much like in the Urantia Book, albeit Jesus taking a vastly different path towards getting there. Historically, the Urantia Book and the Dead Sea Scrolls occupy different positions in the development of religious thought. The Urantia Book is a modern text emerging in the context of 20th century spirituality seeking, scientific advancement, and theological pluralism. It reflects the concerns of the post-Enlightenment world, grappling with the integration of faith and reason, the reconciliation of science and religion, and the search for universal meaning. The Dead Sea Scrolls, by contrast, are ancient texts, rooted in the sectarian struggles of the Second Temple Judaism. They reflect the tensions between different Jewish groups, the impact of Hellenistic culture, and the anticipation of divine deliverance. The scrolls provide invaluable insight into the religious landscape of that time, illuminating the background against which Jesus struggled to either support or completely overturn. In terms of literary style, the Urantia Book is characterized by formal, elevated language, often employing technical terminology and abstract concepts. Its prose is dense and philosophical, requiring careful study and reflection. The narrative of Jesus' life is detailed and expansive, including episodes not found in the New Testament, such as his interactions with celestial beings, his private meditations, and his early travels. The Dead Sea Scrolls, by contrast, are fragmentary and varied in style. Some texts are poetic, others are legalistic, and still others are apocalyptic. The scrolls are written in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, and their preservation is uneven, with many texts existing in only partial form. Their literal value lies in their historical authenticity and their reflection of diverse religious genres. The reception of the Urantia Book and the Dead Sea Scrolls also differs significantly. The Urantia Book has inspired a global community of readers and believers who regard it as a source of spiritual truth and guidance. It has been translated into multiple languages and has influenced various spiritual movements. However, it remains outside of the mainstream of religious scholarship and is often viewed with skepticism by theologians and historians. The Dead Sea Scrolls, on the other hand, have been the subject of intense academic study and have profoundly impacted biblical scholarship, resonating as some of the foundations of most early Judeo-Christian traditions. They have shed light on the development of the Hebrew Bible, the diversity of Jewish thought, and the origins of Christianity. While their religious significance is debated, their historical importance is widely acknowledged. The Urantia Book offers a modern cosmological and theological vision of Jesus as a divine teacher and universal savior, while the Dead Sea Scrolls provide a historical, apocalyptic, and sectarian view of an unidentified Messiah adhering to strict Judaic practices and principles. Even for the devout followers of the Urantia Book, much can be learned about the culture of Judaism during the times of Jesus, both to understand the expectations of that day surrounding a Messiah figure and how Jesus's sometimes stark deviation from their expectations of God that drove the surrounding intolerant decision-making of that area. This includes some of Jesus' apostles who refused not to think of him as anything but the Jewish interpretation of the Messiah. Thank you again for watching today's video, your continued support, and I'll see you on the next one.